Welcome to this week's edition of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. It's also a very special show. We have Ambassador Alan Keyes on as our guest, probably the most intelligent person to run for president in my lifetime. He was also ambassador at the United Nations under Ronald Reagan. And we're going to be discussing a number of topics, but let's get right into it with my so-called monologue. Just this week, the evil, what I'm going to call him, sorcerer, hack, criminal, James Carville, raised his head. I tangled with him during my days at Judicial Watch. He actually was deposed on a number of occasions. He revealed that along with Bill Clinton, they released the Privacy Act protected files of a woman that Bill Clinton had harassed in the Oval Office, Kathleen Willey, who became my client. And now he says he's going to do wet work on Donald Trump. He's come back. Of course, during those days with the Clintons, he ran the war room with another despicable lowlife by the name of George Stephanopoulos, who is on ABC's Good Morning. Why he's there, one only can fathom. It's because of the extreme left-wing views of ABC, but the guy certainly has no talent in terms of being a host on that show. In fact, he can barely see over the desk. That's how short he is. But in any event, we're not going to knock him for that. We're going to knock him for what he is, along with Carville. These people are hatchet men. And because Biden is unable really to articulate, he's unable to function, Carville is rounding up the crew, so to speak, the band of criminals around him, to do a number on Trump. And he's threatening to conduct wet work on Bill Clinton. Excuse me, Freudian slip on Donald Trump. Of course, we know that during these days, there is a lot of violence. We at Freedom Watch adhere to peaceful and legal means, but we've seen it in the streets in recent years from Antifa, Black Lives Matter, the left. I mean, they essentially want to kill us. So it's no surprise that using the language of wet work, which is a CIA term, which means taking someone out, it means killing them. Carville is saying that he and other Democrats are going to do the dirty work for Joe Biden because he's incapable mentally or physically to do it for himself, to destroy Donald Trump. Now, if this had been anyone other than Carville, and if there hadn't been a Gestapo of a Justice Department present today, Carville would be arrested for that. That would be construed to be a threat against a former president of the United States, and the Secret Service would go over and lock Carville up. But of course, that's not going to happen, not with this Gestapo of a Justice Department. But we're going to step in at Freedom Watch. I've dealt with Carville before. I've gotten court rulings that he's lied in terms of what he said to courts. Of course, we determined, as I said, that he released illegally and criminally the Privacy Act protected file of Kathleen Willey, who was a big threat to Clinton's election in 1992. And also he ran the war room with Stephanopoulos to destroy the other women that came forward with regard to Bill Clinton, and a lot of other dirty tricks. So stay tuned. Your Freedom Watch is not going to turn the other cheek. We relish the fight with James Carville. By the way, he looks like he's got 2 feet in the grave. I mean, looks like a skeleton. He's uglier than sin, and he's ugly as a person. I hate to insult this guy, but I remember one time Judge Lambert made a comment because he was presiding over this case where we got these findings in Filegate. He says, boy, that guy is evil, but I'll tell you something. He's smart. He is smart. The devil is smart. So take it seriously. They're coming after Trump, and they're coming after you. And then, of course, we've seen how they've been coming after Trump. He's now having to post a bond to appeal that ridiculous illegal verdict by Judge Erganon, whatever his name is, that he should pay $450+ million with regard to alleged fraudulent pricing, appraisement on some of his properties when he was seeking bank loans. This is something that is beyond the pale. It's never been done before to force someone to post that kind of a bond on a bogus claim. And the fact that the appellate court in New York would not step in and allow Trump to appeal without having to post a bond for that amount, which Trump is apparently unable to obtain, tells you a lot about what the ultimate decision is going to be by the New York appellate courts. The matter may need to go to the U.S. Supreme Court, although I don't think the Supreme Court will take it. It's not really a constitutional issue in many ways, or division among the states in terms of interpreting judgments. So this is another example of how Trump is trying to be destroyed by the left. And of course, by destroying him, they're also seeking to destroy his supporters and people of faith, conservatives and others who believe in the vision and creation of our founding fathers. And then we see what's going on the Texas border. People in hordes running across the border, breaking down barriers, attacking the Immigration and Naturalization Service people there, Texas Rangers and the such. The country is spinning wildly out of control. It's on its last legs, frankly. And unless we rise up and do something, it's not going to be around much longer. So I want you to go to freedomwatchusa.org and contribute to our cause. We are your Justice Department. You have no Justice Department. We mete out the rule of law peacefully and legally. And then, of course, this week, the new Speaker, Mike Johnson, who could very well be removed, caved in to the Democrats and passed in excess of $1 trillion spending bill, supported mostly by Democrats, not many Republicans. You know, we're going to talk about that with Alan Keyes as well. But what's really unbelievable is that somewhere hidden in this bill were appropriations to promote transgenderism and transsexualism and all kinds of other perverted concepts, frankly. And the fact that Republicans would be dragged along into that and not be able to remove that tells you something about the lack of courage of the Republicans on Capitol Hill and generally. And again, that is why you need a Freedom Watch, and it's why you need to go to freedomwatchusa.org and contribute to our cause, because we're unafraid. We don't roll over. We don't turn the other cheek, I won't turn the other cheek with James Carville, frankly. I have an experience with him. And you can go up on our website at freedomwatchusa.org and see the podcast I did last Friday as well, where I attached a deposition that I took of Carville. But Marjorie Taylor Greene filed a motion, so to speak, to have Johnson removed. And he seems like an affable, nice guy on the surface, but frankly, he should be removed because he's little better than Kevin McCarthy, the former House Speaker, at this point in time. Then on another front, you know that Freedom Watch has an antitrust lawsuit against the PGA Tour for attempted monopolization and other unfair trade practices in Florida. Well, it's interesting because the concept of that case was that golf fans are being denied the opportunity to see golfers from the two golf leagues, the new upstart league LIV, play head-to-head with the PGA Tour. And because of the restraint of trade, this is raising the prices for consumers to purchase tickets. Well, we now know that the ratings are way down for the PGA Tour. Fans are getting fed up. They're not getting the value of what they're paying for tickets. They're not even tuning it in on television. And this further strengthens our case. I want you to go look at this case because Freedom Watch doesn't just do political stuff. We want to keep our economy free. We want to see competition. I'm an antitrust lawyer, among many other things. And this is the type of thing that we really need to focus on going into the future, is protecting our economy as well. So I want you to stay tuned here, because what we've seen is a tyranny like we've never experienced in the entire history of this country. We've seen the country basically taken apart at the seams, and we've seen the Republicans unable to stand up to the tyranny of the Democrat left. We, the American people, must rise up ourselves. We cannot sit here and do nothing. And just as Freedom Watch has its citizens' grand juries and citizens' trials, where we indicted Biden, where we convicted him for communist China bribery, and also from Ukraine and Russia, and negligent homicide in Afghanistan, Anthony Fauci for negligent homicide. Biden was sentenced to 20 years, Fauci to life imprisonment. We have Robert Mueller on the chopping block. We just haven't had time to get to it yet. But it's getting to the point where, as we said in our show last week, that we have to be prepared. If Donald Trump wins the election, this country will probably go up in flames. The left will be out in the streets. They'll be seeking to kill conservatives, people of faith, and those who believe in the vision and creation of our founding fathers. We are peaceful and legal at Freedom Watch, but I urge you as Americans to exercise your Second Amendment rights if you have to, because we are on the edge and we need to defend ourselves. And you ought to go out right now and you ought to arm yourself, because although we're not going to start it, we will potentially have to finish it. And I don't want to see that happen. I want to see things to be peaceful and legal. So if the left knows that we're prepared for what they do, which will be child's play compared to what we saw with Antifa and Black Lives Matters and other groups, perhaps we can arrest it right now. But you can see every effort is being made to destroy Donald Trump. And they think by doing that, they will destroy the conservative movement. But we are much more than Donald Trump. Whether you agree with him or not, whether you think he should be president or not, we can see what's happening in this country today. We can see the tyranny. And it was Thomas Jefferson who said that when the people fear the government, there's tyranny. But when the government fears the people, there's liberty. The government needs to fear the people. We'll be back with Ambassador Donald Alan Keyes. Stay tuned and watch very carefully what we're saying, because we need your help. We need you to rise up with us to save this country. And in the meantime, go to freedomwatchusa.org. Contribute to our cause with tax-deductible contributions. We need your help. I'll be right back. I'm back with Ambassador Alan Keyes, former presidential candidate, former Senate candidate. He ran against Barack Obama. I've always said Alan is the most intelligent person to have run for president in my lifetime. Regrettably, he's not president, but he's still helping the country with his intellect and his prognostication as to where we may be going so we can plan for it. So I welcome Ambassador Alan Keyes to the show, my good friend. And I want to ask him the first question. It's the million-dollar question. What's the state of the nation and where are we headed, Alan?
Well, I think that the question of where we're headed is kind of up in the air, because we are, I think, in the midst of one of the most dangerous situations the people of the United States have ever faced. We have, by the usual means, though I myself have serious doubts about whether the 2020 election was in fact a free and fair election and not a stolen one, but leave that aside. Everybody gets to have their view of that, I guess. But we're now faced with a situation in which I think we have a party that has long since abandoned its allegiance to our constitutional self-government under the leadership of somebody who pretty much mocks the idea that you take seriously the leadership position of the country. Because whatever he may have been in his past and background, I think Biden is showing himself to be reasonably incompetent at the job he's supposed to be doing, which leads me to believe others are actually doing it. But we'll see whether that pans out to be the case. But I think it's dangerous that we now have at the helm people who are not committed, just by the by, to the continuation of our constitutional self-government as a people. And I think the fact that they have pretty much literally sponsored a massive invasion of the country in order to create a voting base that they can rely upon is the surest sign we have that we're not headed for trouble. We're in the midst of the most dangerous assault on our existence as a sovereign people I think we've ever seen.
What's your assessment about our foreign policy? Where are we headed there? Do you think that there's a significant risk of a nuclear holocaust, given everything that's going on in the world today?
Well, I think you're always somewhat at risk, but it kind of depends on what others are involved with. If I were just looking at something like the Russian-Ukrainian thing, I wouldn't think that we're in the midst of something that's going to, from our point of view, escalate into the Third World War or another world war. But when I look at what the Chinese have been up to, I feel a serious concern, because I think they have the ambition to overthrow and replace us, and that they are also now working in an environment where one of the major American parties is committed to behaving in a way that actually I think cooperates with that ambition. Because I think the Democrat Party, whatever some of the rank and file people and the regular folks may think, the leadership of the Democrat Party is committed to the overthrow of the Republic. They don't like this form of government. And they are deeply committed, I think, to replacing it with a form of government that looks awfully like the communist Chinese totalitarian dictatorship by an elitist party that then holds others in thrall. And that's something we've been fighting for my whole lifetime. But I don't think it's at all questionable that the Democrat Party consists of people who are deeply committed to that future. a future that already has kind of a mocking instance in Trudeau's Canada.
It's interesting in terms of where we stand today with regard to Israel. Not interesting, it's frightening, frankly. And we see that the Democrat Party has abandoned Israel. They're going to get very few Jewish votes, but then again, there are very few Jewish people in the country, but their contributions are probably going to be cut substantially. Let's deal with that when we come back from the break and talk about that. But right now, maybe in the next minute, we can discuss what's happening at the border, because that's very serious, and pick it up when we come back.
Well, yeah, if you want me to take up that topic, I think what's happening at the border is, as I say, an invasion. And I think it should be called that. Biden is utterly failing in his constitutional duty because last time I looked, it says that he shall see to it that the laws are faithfully executed. Well, the laws that have requirements before people can immigrate into the United States have been totally flouted. And he's not just cooperating in that, his party is sponsoring it.
That'll be a good break point, Alan. We'll be right back with more with Ambassador Alan Keyes. Stay tuned. We're back with my good friend Alan Keyes. You were expounding on the border. Of course, you know, this week we saw hundreds of illegal aliens run across the border. Biden refuses to call them illegal aliens, breaking through fences, attacking the INS, the ICE, as they were there, and Texas Rangers. You've got drug traffickers, human traffickers, sex traffickers, terrorists running across the border. There is no border. And yet, and this can be the segue, the Republicans have basically just caved in to the Democrats in the House of Representatives and passed in excess of a $1 trillion spending bill, which does nothing about immigration and the influx of people into this country. And it's been misrepresented, and the Republicans are not explaining that the legislation which Mitch McConnell and senators over there in the Senate agreed to would not have stemmed the flow of illegal immigration. It would have allowed at least 5,000 more a day to come into this country without the ability to track them. So let's expound on that, Alan, in terms of the hypocrisy here. And frankly, the ineptitude of the Republican Party to explain to the American people that that bill would have accomplished little to nothing.
Well, but I think that I think it's purposeful on the Democrat side that they're cooperating with what essentially amounts to an invasion of the country. You have exceptions to that because I'll take Texas. And now there's brouhaha going on, which I'm sure you're more well-versed in the legal aspect of it than I am. But it seems to me that there's a simple question. And the question is, the Constitution makes it clear that the states are not to be doing things to, make war with other countries and so forth, except they can defend themselves in the case of an actual invasion, which is what I think Texas has been trying to do, defend itself, as in the case of an actual invasion. There's no doubt that this is an invasion because they are entering the country and it's contrary to our laws. They're not being vetted in a way that corresponds to the laws passed by Congress. It is not the president's job to let people into this country on a whim or at his goodwill. He is the servant of the Constitution and the people, and he's ignoring his duty. The Constitution says quite plainly, he shall see to it that the laws, not his edicts, not his preferences, but the laws are faithfully executed. And by allowing a flood of immigrants across the country, by trying to thwart the efforts of the states, who have, by the way, in case of actual invasion, the responsibility and right to defend themselves. And I think they need to go back and look, because they do not have to tolerate a federal government that refuses to defend the states, because that federal official, right now, Biden and his cronies, are basically violating their oath. They are not seeing to it that the laws are faithfully executed. And it has to stop. It has to be stopped. And the states are not required to acquiesce in their dictates.
No, they're not. And I think it's very important. The Governor Abbott, who I think has been slow to act here. I mean, he was good with the politics up front, but finally he's getting some teeth. I commend him. And the Supreme Court did say that the Texas law that allows Texas to enforce its own laws with regard to criminals that come into the state is perfectly constitutional. Yet, apparently, a lower court judge has stayed that implementation, and Governor Abbott of Texas has said, well, I'm not following that. I mean, there's a crisis here. We're going to do what we have to do. So now we have this clash between the state of Texas and the judicial branch. The state of Texas, on behalf of the people of Texas, against judges who are trying to throw a monkey wrench into enforcement. And I think it's great, frankly, that he has defined the courts.
What do you think, though? Because I think in one respect, the notion that a governor subject to an invasion of his state is somehow defying the courts when the courts are telling them, stop faithfully executing the law that allows you to, in the case of actual invasion, those are the words in the Constitution, you can, in fact, defend yourself. Meaning to say you can mobilize your police forces and your militia, or we would call it, I guess, these days, the National Guard, and you can enforce your laws in order to stop that invasion. And the question is, why are we supposed to assume that just because even the president might want, oh, we should have more people in here coming from this place and that place and the other place, when there's a law on the books that makes it his duty to enforce the integrity of our borders, and he not only refuses to do it, he is actually cooperating with the invasion. I think he's already in a position where he has essentially waved a red flag in the front of all states to say you must be derelict in your duty or you must stand against what we are imposing on. And the ultimate implication of that, if you think it all the way through, is civil war.
Well, I think that's where we're headed. And think about this, Alan. What do you think is going to happen the day after President Trump is elected, hopefully being elected? What is going to happen to this country? I think, talk about bloodbath and smearing Trump over the use of that word in the context of building electric cars in Mexico. I think we're going to have an actual attempted bloodbath by the left the day that President Trump is reelected. What do you think?
Well, sadly, I think that's one of the things. And I guess that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get folks to go back, look at our present situation, and call things by their right names in terms of the actual language of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. The actual language of the Constitution makes it clear that the defense of our territory is the purview of the federal government, the national government, except in cases of actual invasion. Then it continues to be the prerogative of the state, each individual state, to defend itself against that invasion. And of course, if you have several states together who are suffering the same plight, they can work together in order to exercise in common what is their duty. It's especially so if you look at what is going on with what's supposed to be the leadership of the national government, and they're not only not defending you from the invasion, they are in fact aiding, abetting the invasion in order to serve their own political ends, which I think everybody's finally waking up to. That these people are trying to, since they can't necessarily constantly be out there trying to steal votes that they don't get, they want to invite people in the country who can then become the voters that they can control.
Well, yeah, that's clearly the case. The other issue is, what do you think will happen in our streets when Trump is reelected? And what should we do about it? How should we prepare?
Well, I think that's, again, a question that it's hard to get into it until we're actually into it. But I think we have to at least be preparing ourselves for the possibility that however the election goes, in fact, the Democrats are going to try to make it out to be an election that they won. And I think that's part of why they're going through all of these machinations, to create terminal confusion. Because you realize a lot of the folks who are illegal immigrants, we see numbers coming across the border. How many are coming across the border and not being seen by us, not being tracked by us or anybody else in the United States? Coming across in numbers that suggest, and by the way, in things that I have been reading, you got a lot of them. People always had, I used to have it, this notion that immigration was about people coming across and try to better themselves. And we as Americans, we have a soft heart for people who are trying to improve their lot and who see in America a place where they could come and, make a better living and raise their children better and maybe have better access to certain kinds of things, including education and so forth and so on. And I think for a time, that sense which we had that, well, that's partly who we are, and we shouldn't just be trying to stop people. There would have been no America if lots of folks hadn't been eager to come over here and help us build this country and so forth. But I think the Democrats have been ruthlessly taking advantage of this situation in order to turn what could be a reasonably controllable tendency of Americans to want to, y'all come and we'll try to make you happy, into a situation that they are now manipulating in order literally to destroy us as a sovereign people, to put us under the subjection of a party dictatorship that then essentially puts paid to the career of the United States of America. Now, do we want this as a people? Because I don't think most Americans even now are thinking of it in those terms. And when they do, they're going to wake up to the fact that you've had an anti-American party successfully implementing an invasion that has taken our country out of our hands. Are we ready to just sit back and let that happen? I don't know.
Well, we've got, the experience of January 6th and the way the Justice Department is behaving these days. And you're a great student of the law, Alan. I would maintain they've been acting like a Gestapo. I mean, not level of a Hitler, but something short of that. And what they're doing with peaceful protesters, and I represent some of them, and I've got lawsuits where these protesters were illegally surveilled, like Snowden revealed many years ago when I got a preliminary injunction against Obama's NSA, is that they're trying to quell all dissent. So they're allowing this invasion to occur, but at the same time, they're saying, you conservatives, people of faith, and those who believe in the vision and creation of our founding fathers, they don't even criticize us because we will crush you. And this is the message that's being sent. And people are scared, and they're scared to rise up, and they're scared to even defend themselves. I think they'll be scared even to use their Second Amendment rights if they have to. Look at what happens with the police. If a policeman tries to defend himself against a criminal, he's the one that winds up getting indicted these days. So give me your thoughts about this, because I think we're living in a dictatorship right now.
De facto, I think in many respects we are, but it's still a dictatorship that is continuing to exist because it's being tolerated. Right? It's not that people don't have the wherewithal to do something if they would do it. But how many Americans understand the simple facts that I've been trying to share in the last 5 minutes or so, and realize that it is not a prerogative of the president to enforce laws contrary to the laws that are on the books. He doesn't have that prerogative. Okay? He has to see to it that the laws are faithfully executed. And unless we are faced by an actual, threat from foreign military power to take over this country in an overt way, then the commander-in-chief, of course, has to be organizing us to fight against it. But that's exactly the opposite of what he's doing. So if you have somebody who has already decided to join the jackals in terms of working to overthrow our American self-government as citizens of the United States, and they're working together with who? Well, with foreign powers, quite obviously, including some that I can think of, one in particular, the Chinese, who have a special interest in helping out. Because if they can get rid of the obstacle of the United States, I think they're now pretty much thoroughly convinced they're going to become the world's #1 power. And if Americans think that's going to be really comfortable for us, they need to wake up. It's not. And I don't think, by the way, that once people do wake up, we're going to go down without a fight. But at that point, it will be a fight that is conducted on the worst possible grounds for the people of the United States, because our united commitment to maintain our sovereignty will by that time have suffered from the fact that nobody's expressing it. Nobody's seeing this every day in terms of the fact that what is being done is a sponsored invasion, filling the country with people who are not entitled to vote. But even now, these people are talking about trying to expedite their voting. If you've brought in a lot of people and they haven't been vetted, and we actually haven't been keeping track of who they are, where they went, and so forth and so on, how are you going to be able to stop people from putting their names into the pot of citizens who are going to vote for the president of the United States in our next election? Okay? Yeah, you can send people out there to scurry and run around and try to figure out who's who, but being as how you let at least hundreds of thousands of people.
Alan, but we'll be right back with the verdict. Stay tuned. Alan Keyes and I will give you the verdict of where we are as of right now. God bless. We'll be right back. We're back with the verdict, fellow patriots, people of faith, those who believe in the vision and creation of our founding fathers. And Jefferson believed, and the book that I wrote, Alan, which you were kind enough to write a foreword for, was actually refreshed about a year or so ago. First, it was "It Takes a Revolution, Wake Up America." Now it takes a counter-revolution. But Jefferson said that every 20 years or so, we would likely have to clean house. We would likely have to wage a rebellion, saying that what's a few thousand dead to refresh the tree of liberty? He didn't want to see violence. Neither do I, neither do you. But do you see any scenario where the people are going to have to fight back and do what Jefferson predicted at some point?
Well, see, I think it depends on some things that I don't know the answer to. One is Donald Trump, everybody thinks he represents himself and so forth. I don't think so. I think he stirred a response because a lot of Americans are feeling uneasy in the situation in which our governments at various levels, but especially the House, seem to be usurping our sovereignty. We are supposed to be the sovereign in this country. We're supposed to rule the people, the sovereign body of the people, not the sovereign body of the elites, the government, the administrators, and so forth and so on. The answer to us. Have we been doing our job? I'm not sure we have, because a lot of people, I think, in America now know that their citizens have a rudimentary idea of going to vote and stuff, but they don't understand that they're sovereign. That is to say, not sovereign individuals, but part of a sovereign body charged with the responsibility of preserving the republic. And that's a charge that extends to every election and shouldn't be traduced by all of the political goings on, so that people forget and don't even see that the country is being invaded and our form of government of, by, and for the people is effectively being overthrown by the invitation into the country of foreigners who I believe will, when push comes to shove, the sad part of it is, if the bad guys are still anywhere near in charge, I think that they're going to be having invited a lot of people who, when I look at them across the border, I said, those look like real able-bodied men, could go right into a military and shoot your head off. Why are we allowing this to happen? And I think that the end result of that is going to be a war. We'll fight it because we're still, they haven't been able to get rid of the Second Amendment yet. And as a result, a lot of people in this country are armed. But are they trained? Are they committed and ready to face such a thing where their country's being taken away from them at various levels, piecemeal, and they have to do something about it? I think the time to think about that is now, and in a context where if people mobilize on that basis, to remember one thing, you must reject the Democrats because they're sponsoring the evil. You must look for somebody who isn't sponsoring the evil, and Donald Trump has volunteered. And then once he gets into office, you must make sure he secures the office. And then you have to move forward to undo the deep damage that they have been doing to our own sense of our role as the sovereign people of the United States.
Well, that's very well put. I pray that we don't get to the point of violence. That's what I do. What I do at Freedom Watch. That's what I did when I was running Judicial Watch. But I'm afraid, and I don't want to see it, that that's where we're headed. So you hit the nail on the head. We need to prepare for that, because we just can't sit here and wait for them to come to us. We have to be able to defend ourselves. And that may mean that we have to arm ourselves to get ready for that eventuality, because These people know no bounds. They know absolutely no constraint. And we can see that now. They're using the legal system against Donald Trump. They will, if they don't succeed with that, plan B. Plan B is, more Antifas, more Black Lives Matters, more, riots by radical Palestinian groups that are threatening the fabric of this country. And the youth of this country is completely clueless. So, Alan, I want to thank you for everything that you have done. You're my very good friend. And let's continue to stay vigilant and try to teach the other people in this country what they need to do. Because if God doesn't help us, or if we don't help ourselves, God certainly won't, that's for sure. And I know you're a religious man. So thank you, Alan. God bless you.
You're welcome. God bless you, sir.
Hope to see you soon. We'll be back next week with another edition of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. Remember, the Father and Son will only help us if we help ourselves. Thank you for listening to us.